Welcome to Money Adventures with TK, a podcast for the ordinary young African who is determined to get their personal finances right. Willing to have a better relationship with your money? Well, this podcast is for you.
Hello fellow trailblazers, welcome back to Money Adventures with TK, a platform where we bring you fresh, relevant, educational and inspiring money stories from industry experts, young professionals and entrepreneurs. And my hope is that through this platform, you'll be inspired to have a better relationship with your money. So in the last few weeks, I've been talking to a number of people who are actually facing retirement. And what I saw on their faces really had me worried. And, from people saying they're not adequately prepared for retirement, to people saying they have not saved enough for retirement, people who don't even understand what annuities are. So I decided, let's have a conversation about annuities and retirement planning. And of course, who else would I invite to the platform to have this conversation with? Ladies and gentlemen, I reintroduce Teboho Makoetlane. He goes by the name of, I used to know him as a retirement preacher. I don't know if he's still a guy. He's not new to the platform. He's been here before. I'll also link that particular episode to the discussion this morning. But the reason I brought him here is because I really am worried about how people perceive retirement and how they're preparing for retirement. Sure. So, Mr. Makoetlane, welcome back to Money Adventures.
Thank you.
Let's start with introducing yourself again for those who do not know you.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's always an honor to talk about money. And it's always exciting to have a conversation about things that confront us in one way or another, because someone out there knows better. So I'm a lot of things. Retirement preacher is one of them. I have been in corporate and in the insurance, pensions and investments industry for about 13 years. It has been an exciting journey until sometime last year I decided, let me do some freelance work, step away from corporate for a bit, even though I'm back in somehow. Let me not spend too much time trying to tell you who I am. Let's talk about what I know, and that might help somebody somewhere.
So starting with what you know, you've been in the industry for over 13 years.
Sure.
What does a retirement look like in the Lesotho context?
It's probably at a very exciting stage now. 2019, we saw the promulgation of the Pension Funds Act. That means before that, we've been operating without any legal framework that guides how the practice should be, both for consumer protection and for market conduct. So it means that between 4 life insurance companies that we had in the country, everyone was practicing however they thought was probably appropriate for their business model. But now that the act is out, it puts pressure on compliance, which eventually will be passed to the customer because compliance is costly. So I think customers must be on the lookout to find a complying fund. Non-compliance is very costly as well. If they normally say, if you want to test yourself, try non-compliance. If you think compliance is expensive, try non-compliance. There's fines that come with non-compliance. And most importantly, that could also translate into bad performance of investments for customers. So it's important that members look for, or at least start asking the right questions. Their trustees, their employers, are we a compliant fund? It's a very important question. So it's exciting also. The Act talks about something very profound, which I'm very passionate about, something we call local asset requirements. Previously, the Income Tax Act used to say 20% of pension fund investments should be localized. Nobody was chasing pension funds to make sure that that is actually done. But now the PFA, the Pension Funds Act, now says 30%. That means we're no longer saying all the money should go to Santin and develop other industries on JSE and those spaces. We are forced to find investable opportunities in the Lesotho economy to comply with that provision. So that says there is going to be excess capital flowing in our economy. What we need to people that are innovative, they now need to come up and say, and approach pension funds. I have a project, I need a financier. If it's a long-term project, if it's public infrastructure, if it's property, whether it's for middle or high, it doesn't matter. But there is money that's going to be flowing in our economy. The question is, who will it finance? So people that know they have brilliant ideas, this is the time to come out.
So bringing back to the members, so suppose I am contributing to a pension fund that's compliant.
Sure.
Now suddenly there's this conversation that the capital will be flowing and will be financing ideas.
Sure.
Should I not be worried as a member who's contributing towards
you should.
the fund?
You should. The question is, if the fund eventually decides to finance a project somewhere, members will have to be consulted. Representatives of members, which are trustees, will have to make that decision on behalf of the members, and I presume that there will be some consultative process. But unfortunately, members don't understand the business of pension funds like trustees, and I'm hoping the trustees know better. And if that's not the case with your fund, I'm telling you, you're in trouble. Trustees must be knowledgeable in the full cycle of the running of a pension fund, from the collection of contributions to the investment to the reporting, everything. They must be in the know. Now, they would, and I assume that they would not make that decision willingly or with their eyes open to say, we're going to invest in a fly-by business and then tomorrow member funds have disappeared. So members must be worried. They must hold their trustees accountable to the decisions they will make, to the process they will follow in terms of where the money is invested. So this for me says trustees must upgrade themselves. Here's another opportunity. Trustee training is a huge opportunity. Training them in the different aspects or elements of the business of a pension fund, so that when they make that decision, they are ready to make it. If there is anything that has in the past maybe 10, 15 years crippled the decision-making process of trustees is ignorance. Because there was no act to base yourself on, and trustees felt they're making decisions out of ignorance, or what's the right word to use, but ignorance, or without a baseline to work from. Now, here's one thing that people should know. If you are a trustee of a pension fund, you are liable. Your decisions that you make, you are liable. If there's an adverse outcome later, you can be sued even at the level of your personal property. So it's very important that trustees are empowered to make those decisions. As a member of a pension fund, you must also desire to know what questions to ask. This is no longer time for you to look at your benefit statement, look at the value of your fund credit, and then file it away. It's important that you interrogate your benefit statement, your investment fund fact sheets, to say, where is our money sitting? And I think that's another thing that's exciting. Our reporting has to change now, either at a level, at a member level, or at an employer fund level, to say, here is the geographic location, or what's the right word? Oh my goodness. This is where our assets have been placed. 70% is on the JSE, 30% is on Maseru Stock Exchange, or in property. It can be anything. Now, the beauty in other spaces like SA, they have, in the Pension Funds Act, they have a provision called Regulation 28, which prescribes where assets must be. How much can you put in property? How much exposure you can place in different asset classes? We don't have that. So it's still an opportunity. If we decide we want to put all our money in building dams, nobody will say don't. So there aren't many restrictions in terms of where you can place those assets. So we still have a lot of learning to do. Even the regulator still has a lot of I don't want to say learning, because he might be listening. The regulator is yet to see how the act, as they designed it, as they wrote it, will help the growth of the industry. So there's a lot of learnings that and that calls for amendments every now and then, and it means that members also must contribute to that process. If there's something that is adversely affecting members, it must come forth in the right platforms. The regulator must be aware of those things. And I think it's a very important transition in the industry. There's a lot of opportunities for everyone.
So I think for me, one of the things that stood out from what you just shared now is the members' role in all of this. Because many a time the members just are passive and are waiting for decisions to be made on their part, you know. So what kind of education do members actually have to do at a member level to say that for me to ask the right questions to the board of trustees, for me to ask and contribute to the development of the act and how it should play out, what are some of the things that members need to be doing?
Get a copy of the rules of your fund. That's the first thing you should do. And read that document. Read that document in the context of the Pension Funds Act. You see, because we are operating without a Pension Funds Act, it means that the rules that exist now would have been drafted out of maybe, for best practice, copied SA, copied Namibia or whoever. But now we're now forced to make sure that the rules of the fund comply with the act line by line. You know, so it says, yes, the rules of the fund are important, but they were drafted pre-act. So you now need to make sure that the rules of your fund comply with the Pension Funds Act. That's the best place to start. The rest, just go online and say Pension Funds Act, pension funds in SA, but mostly SA, because when you look at the SADC region, most of them copied the SA framework. It's been there since 1955. So I think it's the best place to learn from. There's places like MoneyWeb. I trust that website very much.
I do.
There is a lot of content there. And there's FinWeek. Is it FinWeek? Or Fin24?
Fin24.
Yeah.
There is also a FinWeek, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, there is a FinWeek.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. So I think those platforms, there's a lot of information. For scholars who want to go deeper, there is... I would share them maybe somewhere else.
Okay, cool. So the one question that I also want, so there's this, I believe, particularly for young people, the earlier you start saving towards your retirement, the better your page will be, you know. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there's people who are now retiring, facing tough decisions to say, am I buying an annuity or am I not buying an annuity? What is an annuity?
Okay, so an annuity is just a fancy way to say post-retirement income, or guaranteed post-retirement income. But unfortunately, it doesn't start there. The journey starts now. You're 24 years old, you just landed your first job, you want to buy things, a car and a house maybe. But unfortunately, one day you will become old. So you need to prepare for that. So take that as buying your future. Take that as buying comfort. Take that as giving a vote of confidence to your future. I have been in a space where I've watched my parents struggle in retirement. So I know that time comes. You know, so we cannot sit here and pretend it doesn't come. There are three very important variables that matter in making sure that your annuity conversation makes sense. The first one is you need to commit at least 15% of your monthly salary or monthly income. Let's not salary because, I'll get to that. Monthly income, total income. And it must be committed to an investment vehicle for at least 30 years for you to say you will retire comfortably at the end of it all. And the investment, the kind of return that you get is at least inflation plus 4. For those that appreciate numbers, inflation is forever depleting the value of our money. So saying it must grow at least inflation plus 4, you're saying it must stay ahead of price increases of things that we buy, so that the value of your money is preserved somehow. If you are faithful to that process, your annuity discussion will be a completely different discussion. Completely. So here's the thing. An annuity depends on how much you have. Your capital defines how much you will get. I know there is the understanding or the myth that tšhelete annuity nyane, tšhelete annuity ha nyane. your savings. If your savings are small, your annuity will be small.
So I think we need to repeat that again.
Okay.
Because I think that's where a lot of people fundamentally get it wrong, to say that annuity is going to be not enough for me to live by. But what we're not getting is how much were you contributing towards that annuity. So I think maybe let's just repeat that again.
The unfortunate thing is we have the annuity conversation late in the journey. So we need to have it now to say contribute more, comply with the recommendations that actuaries and investment people give us to say contribute a minimum of 15%. Now your employer gives you only 5%. It's your responsibility to go up to 10. If your employer doesn't give you anything towards retirement, it's your responsibility to go up to 15 and more. And remember, there's also tax deductibility issues. If you contribute more towards retirement, your pay as you earn goes down. And that's a benefit that a lot of people are not taking advantage of. You'd rather pay more money to LRA instead of paying more money into your future. So I think the wise decision is pay more money into your future and not to the income tax authority. Now, if you contribute less into your retirement over your working life, do not expect more in terms of post-retirement income. So small capital accumulated leads to small income when you have retired. So if you want to live at a standard of living that's decent, that you've been sort of accustomed to, make sure that you buy it now. If you don't buy it now, don't expect to get it.
I think also adding to the buying it now. So here is TK, young professional, hopping from one job to the next, and every opportunity I get, I cash out that to pay off my debt, to buy a new car, to go on a holiday, let's talk a bit about the importance of preservation of these funds.
It's not an easy decision. I've been confronted with that decision a couple of times, and I've preserved a couple of times, and there were times when I didn't. But truth be told, and I'm going to make an example with me because I know me more than anyone else. So my 12 years of savings, because I left my job to start things from scratch, I had to use those savings to sort of fuel those plans. Now, it means in terms of the 30 years that we're saying is the minimum that you need to commit your contributions to, it means I've lost 12 years. You can't buy the 12 years on a shelf somewhere. It means you need to find better ways of making more money and then accelerate your savings to cover up the 12 years that I have lost. One day when I retire, I'm going to complain that the annuity is small. The answer is 12 years. So every time you move from one employer to another, preserve your capital. It preserves the whole annuity discussion. It preserves the post-retirement discussion. Here is another thing that we must be careful of. People are living long for some weird reason. I know COVID is here clouding our judgment, but people are living for a long time, and longevity is expensive.
So basically, bring it to context. I retire at age 60, but I live on till I'm 80 or 86.
Yes, sir.
So which means I need to have enough money to carry me till those years.
Enough might be an understatement. Can we do a quick calculation while we're still at it?
In the last 2 minutes. Let's do a quick calculation. Wow.
Living expenses at retirement. Let's do an estimate. You need medical aid probably. The most basic plan now. It's probably 1,000. You need groceries. That's another 1,000.
That's another 1,000.
Let's stop there. Let's say you don't travel, you don't go anywhere. You just eat and make sure that you're healthy.
I also need electricity and water.
Let's assume that you have a huge solar panel. You don't have to buy anything but just those two things. Now, that's 2,000 per month. Multiplied by 12, multiplied by 20 years that you will live up to 80. That's 480,000.
My goodness.
If you don't have it now, let's not even talk about it. So it's important that you have an equivalent of 480,000 20 years from now when you retire, or 30 years from now when you retire. And if you were to put like a projection on what 480 will be then, it will tell you a story of how much you have to save.
My goodness. So, Mr. Makoetlane, in the last minute to wrap up this one, I'm actually quite scared because I now have to look at my individual numbers. So there's a young person who is listening to this particular episode. What do we say to them who is thinking, I have not started, whether I am employed or I'm a freelancer or I am an entrepreneur? What do we say to them? What's the call to action to say that if you have not started saving for your retirement or planning about your retirement, what do we say to them at this point in time?
I would say look at the story of your parents. If it's not a nice story, go get a financial advisor immediately. I think that's the best advice I can. If your parents have a nice story, either saving in the traditional way, buying into a pension fund, and then buying an annuity later, and that story works, that's fine. Or somebody else's parents will say, I've been working, I have a business, and that business is my annuity. Because an annuity is just a post-retirement income.
Yeah.
You can create that annuity outside the insurance space or the pension space. As long as you have a mechanism of providing post-retirement income that you don't have to work for, you are sorted. But if your parents don't have a good story to tell, please find an advisor. TK is one of them. He will help you.
Thank you very much. If you've been listening to this podcast and you are worried about your retirement plan and your finances in general, please speak to an accredited and licensed financial advisor. And again, this does not constitute as financial advice. If you are looking for financial advice, please seek the necessary help. And remember to like, comment, share this particular episode, and let's talk about your particular retirement plan. What does that look like? I know mine looks very scary, but I've started. So I hope you have the courage to start as well. Thank you for listening to Money Adventures. Until the next episode, love, peace, and money. Thank you guys. Cheers.
You've been listening to Money Adventures with TK. We want to hear from you. Don't be shy to like, comment, and share. Money's an adventure. Let's enjoy the ride.